Welcome everybody. I hope I don't speak too loud, but I'm very surprised that there are also people from Thailand. Also very welcome. First of all, I would like to thank the organizing committee and especially Professor Mimica for this invitation to give the talk here. I know the talk is in English and sometimes words are maybe misunderstood or something like that. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to interrupt me because that makes the discussion also more lively, and then afterwards we can do the more heavy questions. Yeah? Okay, good. It's a new treatment for Alzheimer's disease. It's a treatment, like Professor Mimica already said, it's a non-pharmacological treatment, and it's more for mild and moderate patients. What's mild and moderate patients? That's just a name, I always say a number. So you can treat patients who can at least sit half an hour and still read. And so that can also be from moderate till severe. Let me see, go on. It's like that. Okay. I think I just pushed the wrong button. Let me see.
No, we don't have button. Pointer.
Pointer.
Where is pointer? We need a pointer.
It's here.
Okay, yes.
Good. This is my agenda. Sorry about this. I thought you can do it. Sometimes it's about it's on the motherboard. But I have promised not to talk too much about Alzheimer's disease because you all know what's Alzheimer's disease. In this lecture, I've only left 2 slides because I think it's still very important to be aware about which problem we are talking about. Let me see like that. So what I want to show you is this, is the following, because like I said, we don't know what kind of problem we are talking about. If you see to the most common death causes in the world, Alzheimer is the only one that's still growing, and it's still growing with 80% a year. So that means that this burden is enormous. And we all have to be aware of that, and we have to find something. Because the thing is that I have at home a magazine, it's Nature and Science, it's from 1990. And at that time, it's a special edition about the brain. And at that time, all the big pharmaceutical companies promised that they had the cure for Alzheimer. So big companies like Pfizer, Ciba-Geigy, you name it. And now we are 26 years further and we don't have anything. We have cholinesterase inhibitors, and if you have really already moderate to severe patients, you have memantine, and that's it. And so all these big companies stop putting their fund in this research. So now you have a lot of new companies. It's the biogenetic companies who are putting a lot of money in research for Alzheimer. But I can tell you, I was in Mannheim 2 weeks ago. There was an overview of what kind of things are coming. And if they are really in time, then the next 15 years we will have nothing. We will still stuck with the same stuff we have now. So we have to find a solution to get hold of this enormous problem. And that's the reason why I just wanted to take that you pay attention to this also. This is about the cholinesterase inhibitors I told you about. They are there and they have a function, of course. But the problem is that after, let's say, 12 months, the efficacy is, I don't say zero, but it doesn't work anymore. And you cannot give another one because it has the same response mode. That's one thing. The other thing is that you have a lot of side effects. Side effects is like this because you as a doctor know exactly that you can administer cholinesterase inhibitors. If you start very slow, then everybody can tolerate them. But at least there are some patients who have problems with that. With this method I'm going to talk about in a moment, you can even combine these 2 things. So you can combine the existing medication with this therapy, and that has also a synergetic effect. I took away also the memantine slide, because memantine is more for moderate to severe, and that has not much to do, but everybody knows that memantine is also not the most effective agent, but there's nothing else. Let's say it like that. So here you have the technology overview. It's a very bad photo, I think. It looks like a dentist chair, that's one thing. Some people even said to me that it's something else. I'm not going to repeat what it is. But what's missing in this thing is that it's not complete. You see the chair here, but with the chair belongs also a neural navigation system. Because what I will tell you in a moment, it's that this therapy is a combination of magnetic stimulation, so RTMS, and cognitive training. But it's not a standard RTMS. It's something different, because RTMS is mostly used to stimulate all one region or one side of the brain. We stimulate 6 regions in the brain, and for that you need a neural navigation system. But for the rest you have seen now, it comes back, so I'm going to go on. What's the technology? I just told you already, it's an RTMS system that at the same time has a combination with cognitive training. The reason why that is following, because I have had many discussions about this, that RTMS probably can also work for Alzheimer, and that's true. It works very short. You see a short up, that people get a little bit better, and goes fast, very fast down. That has something to do with this LTP principle, the long-term potential. And like we all know, long-term potential is a thing that exists not only with Alzheimer patients, with everybody. That's what to do if you get a very repetitive stimulation of the nerves, and at the same time register something, you're learning. And that's what the strong side of this system is, that you have a combination of the two. Because like I said, we stimulate 6 regions of the brain, but not at the same time. We stimulate them one by one. And so that means that if you stimulate one region, you will get all examples of that a little bit later, but if you stimulate one region, for example, Broca, at the same time we give the exercise that belongs to Broca. And that's the power of the system. So, on the while, I'm talking too much, but you have read already how the treatment is. It's 6 weeks, 5 days a week, 1 hour. We say that like that, it's not 1 hour, but we say 1 hour. Why? The first 2 days, 3 days, you need 1 hour to get the patient used to the chair, because it's a frightening thing sometimes. That's one thing. I will tell you another story, that after 3 or 4 days you don't get the patient out of the chair anymore. That's another thing. And after 6 weeks, then the treatment is finished. People are telling you that they are going to come back next week. And you tell them, no, but it's finished. They say, no, I'm going to come back next week. People like it. You will see later also why that is. But, so like I said, it's 6 weeks, 5 days a week, 1 hour. And we treat 3 brain regions each day. And then you say, you just told me 6 brain regions. That's true, we stimulate 6 brain regions, but we cannot do that in 1 day, because that gets too much. So that means alternating, we do 3 regions one day, 3 regions other day, and it's going on like that. So what we need from you as a neurologist, psychiatrist, somebody who makes the diagnosis for Alzheimer, I think also here it's that you make an MRI. That's right, to confirm that. So what we need, in fact, to do this therapy, we need an MRI. And so you can send that to our company. I'm sorry about it, I didn't tell you where it is located, but the system is from Israel. And the research part is also in Israel, and we have a small headquarters in Boston, and that we need for the FDA trial, who is accomplished now, or is finished. But the thing is that you send this MRI to us, and we do the mapping. So that means that, because for every patient, the mapping is different. That's one thing. And the mapping is put on 2 special USB sticks. That sounds very simple, but it's not like that. We do that. It has a privacy reason because in some countries you are not allowed to put this information in the system. That's one thing. The other thing is that it's also a little bit personalized because you have the mapping, and on the same sticks is also the training. And you know why? You can imagine that you have patients who improve very fast. You have also patients who improve very slow. So that means that if you put it on the system, that the slow patient would suffer from the fast patient. So with this stick, everybody has his own training, his own mapping, and you can follow for each patient individually the progression. So that's, like I said, we need the mapping for the 6 regions. That's Broca, Wernicke, left and right prefrontal, and left and right parietal. So you send that to us, we do the mapping, you get it back, 2 sticks, one as a backup, and some other things I can tell you later there if you want. And then you get it back in a few days, and so you can start the treatment. So the patient treatment starts, like I said, it's 6 weeks, 30 sessions, that's it. I'm going to say a little bit more about the 30 sessions because you can ask yourself where that's coming from. I will come back on that a little bit later. And then you get this. And what's that? It's maybe not very honest, but it's the diagram you see here, or the graphic you see here, it's the Cochrane study. So you have the line, the green line, if you see it, it's the line when you do nothing with an Alzheimer patient, and you see then after a year how that degrades. Then the next line is the red line, that's the cholinesterase inhibitors. And you see also that goes down. And I think I have a pointer also, yeah, here. This is what we're doing, because after 6 weeks of treatment, you get an improvement more than 4 points on the ADAS-Cog. And that lasts for almost 10 months till a year. You see that here. And then, that we did, I will show you a graphic about that, but that's a very old graphic. But then you can repeat it. So you can repeat the same treatment, so you do again, 6 weeks of treatment, and people get again here, patients. So that means you have already 2 years that you prolong or the cognitive abilities of patients and also their things. So what I always say, it's not a cure, but you push the disease away. Now you're going to ask me, how often is this possible? We don't know, because we have only done 2 years now. But I'm almost 100% sure that there is with a lot of patients the possibility to do it more, because what you do is, in fact, you stimulate this long-term potential, and you will see that a little bit later with the functional MRI, a little bit what's going on, and then I think you understand. But to tell you the truth, I can only say that I think that. That's the only thing. So, okay, everybody, I believe, knows magnetic stimulation, so I can be very brief about that. But there are not a lot of contraindications. The only contraindications are, and that depends also on the doctor, it's a pacemaker, it's an ICD, and it's if a patient has epilepsy, or let's say has a plate in the brain, what doesn't happen so often anymore, a metal plate, but okay, it still can be. What are the side effects of the treatment? The side effects are the same with other RTMS procedures, is that the patient can have a slight headache. So most of the time that doesn't happen very often, but we see it. And then if you ask the patient, say after an hour, it's gone. In fact, we stimulate not like with depression, but depression you stimulate very, very high. We have a lower rate, so we stimulate with 10 hertz, 2 seconds, and then 8 seconds break. And that's let's say 10% of the threshold to evoke an epileptic insult. So we have never seen that somebody got an epileptic insult because, like I said, we stimulate at such a low rate. There's another thing, but we'll do that very quick because that's not in the presentation, is that we have that already from the beginning, but we never talked about that. But we have also the registration for all other neurological disorders. And that, like I said, I think, I told Professor Minister, I believe, but the thing is that if you start the system, you get 2 buttons on the operator screen. One button is NeuroAD, because that's the system, how it's called, and the other thing is called Plus. That's a new thing, but it's inside already, like from the beginning. And if you push the plus, you get an open RTMS system. So you can then do also all the other, treat all the other neurological disorders. The only thing you have to ask us, but we do that for free, we write the protocol for you. Because the thing is that protocols change. Now before, protocol was that depression were stimulated 6 weeks, then have a group that 4 weeks, and so we said we're not going to do any regime inside. You tell us, we make it, and then we can do it together. Uh-oh. Did we get something? Let me see. Okay, yeah. So I told you, this is just a very brief thing because I will go through it a little bit longer. Because the thing is that what's very important, we make also the cognitive training ourselves. And like I said, it's not like with a treatment like brainwave or something like that, that you stimulate at once the whole brain. Now we stimulate each region individually, and each region has its own training. So this is very, very simple because we go more deeper in it. But like I said, we have the Broca, Wernicke, left and right prefrontal, and right and left parietal. So now you can see here's Broca. Now I don't have to tell you probably what Broca is responsible for, but it's like to form sentences. I always say it in a very simple way, because that will say more than 1,000 words when you see the exercise of the patient who has to do. So what we do is we have a system that is in one way the patient has interaction with the computer, and with some other exercises that had interactions with the operator or the technician who is there. And that's very important because that's also very important for one of the studies that I'm going to show you. But this is very simple, of course. Everybody from us here knows that that's not the same. My dad is tall, my tall is that. That's not the same. But for an Alzheimer patient, sometimes that's very confusing, and that's just the first question. And then you have moderate, and we go, like I said, every day gets more difficult, and every week you go to a next level. So, like I said, week 2, you have, I watch the news every day I watch the news. That's just examples of the questions we ask. So then you have Wernicke. There's also for languages, of course, but that's more like how to interpret language and how to interpret things, because it doesn't have to be always words. It can be pseudo words, can also categories, and you will see why I'm telling that, because this is not a word, of course, but it's asked to the patient, what is that, clothes or tools? And this is then a little bit more difficult, animals or tools. That's just examples of these questions. Then you have, like I said, the prefrontal cortex. It looks like of all the exercises are the same for left and right, and that's not true, but just to be keep it very simple, it's like that. But examples here are this, for example, because you see it should be a question inside here, but what we are asking is, in fact, you get that the patient gets to see these 2 colors, and then there is a break inside, and then after the break the patient has to answer if one of these colors is there or not. And it looks very simple, but just to the difference of the colors you get already a more difficult structure. And then you get word recall. And that's, like I said, that's also an interaction with the technician or the operator of the system. So because what's happening is that, this is very easy, but the patient has to remember this 3 words, 5 words, gets to 10, 15 words even. And then he gets a break, that's this thing, and then he has to repeat this 3 words, 5 words, 10 words to the operator. And the operator is answering then if it's false or true. And in one way, that's a very, how to say, it's a very special thing. And like I said, I will come back to that. There's a Korean study, and you will see that why it's very important, because we can do more than only this machine. So, because you see 3 words, 5 words, now you have to think about it. Then you can parietal, it's like the coordination, how to grab things, but there's also deep, I have to say. And then examples of this is then very easy. What's asked here, if you see a vertical red rectangle, because that should be somewhere in this presentation but left, but so you see there is not a red vertical rectangle, and the second one it is. And here, that's already the third week, so it gets more difficult like that. There's not only this, but there are more like that. So just to come back very shortly to this long-term potential mechanism, there's, I think, the specialists, we have a specialist sitting at the table here, but people who know more about it than me. But the thing is that it has something to do with the forming of receptors, and also the forming of which receptors and which neurotransmitter is released. Now you see here that with Alzheimer patients, or the number of neurotransmitters, of the production of neurotransmitters is less, or the number of receptors is less, or some of the receptors are blocked, and that's a thing what has to do with LDP. But you see that, and that's a little bit what you will see from a functional MRI, is that due to the fact that we stimulate and do that, you get a better perfusion of the brain, of course. And when you get a better perfusion of the brain, you get more nutrients, more things, and you get also a higher production of normally of neurotransmitters. And as a feedback of that, of course, production of receptors. This is has to do with patterns, so it's nothing interesting. But I just wanted to say to you, it's like I just was telling the people in Thailand, because there are 2 machines standing in Thailand already for 3 years now. They were, let's say, one of the first countries in the world, beside Korea and Israel, of course, who have these machines, and that's in Bangkok. I will find out which hospital, but you see that we have the clearance for almost all the regions in the world. There are even more than listed. And we have done the FDA study. We have done 120 patients. They ask us only 100 patients. So that gives also an idea how secure things are. And we have in 100 patients, we have to prove that the efficacy and that it's a secure method and that it works. So we have submitted that, and probably we're going to get that the first quarter of 2017. The only thing I can tell you is that that's not very often, but we get a special track from the FDA, and that means that normally if you submit something to the FDA, it takes at least a year. With us, it will probably take 6 months to 9 months. It's a fast track. It's called E140 or something like that. And that has something to do with the need of this system. And you see that we have already the CE mark for a long time. And then you say, why are we not on the market more early? It's always with the startup firms. I've worked for a lot of them. They're always, let's say, research firms. They're only people working who want to invent things, but to invent things costs money. But so you have to, at one way or the other, to earn also some money, and that's the reason why we finally, for 1 year or a little bit more than 1 year, started to work in the European market. And so we have quite a lot of machines in Germany, French, UK, Italy. And so this is the approval, and there you see your partners in the US. That's let's say the hospitals who were involved in the FDA trial. So here you have this Cochrane graph again. So we have seen it. It works. It has a better function than, of course, cholinesterase inhibitors. But like I said, if you combine these two, then you have even, because we did that with patients who couldn't tolerate this medication, and patients who had already this medication, you see that if you have a combination, people improve even more. So I just going to show you very small studies, and the reason why I'm going to do that is that because I'm going to take you to, let's say, a lifespan of a few studies, because this was one of the first studies we did. Like I told you, we didn't know if you have to stimulate 6 weeks or 4 weeks or 10 weeks, or if you do maintenance or not. So the thing is that you can ask me why we stimulate 6 weeks, and I can tell you, I don't know. The only thing I can tell you is that in the beginning we were stimulating depression for 6 weeks. So we thought, okay, let's do 6 weeks. And so what we have done in all the studies, we have changed things. They stimulate, for example, 6 weeks, or stimulate 4 weeks, and then wait 1 month. So this is one of the studies. This is one of the first one, and you see that we did then 6 weeks stimulation, and then afterwards 12 weeks, 2 times a week. We found out that that's completely not necessary, because if you stimulate only 6 weeks, you have the same result after 4.5 months. But okay, good. This is what was one of the first studies we did with a few patients, just to find out. That's the same, but we looked also to a little bit more other, other tests to measure the improvement of patients. And what we found out is that there's, in fact, nothing better than ALZHEIMEROVJ to do that, because it's more complete test. The only thing is what we're going to do, we're going to change that. We're going probably to change to ChemCoc. The problem is why ALZHEIMEROVJ is a very good test, but probably the people here at the table can tell me that, and maybe you also. But the problem is with ALZHEIMEROVJ, it takes you 1 hour or 2 hours, and if you have to do that with every patient before and after, that's a long time, and a lot of time spent. So you have now it's ChemCoc. It's from Cambridge. It's a very small test. It takes you not time, because it's given on an iPad, and the patient can do it, and it has the, let's say, similar results as this test. This is another study from Rabi. Professor Rabi has done a lot of work on that. He's was a professor of neurology. He's now eminent, but he's still doing a lot of work for us, and he's one of the first guys who started up. But this is his follow-up study. It's the same. He did also 6 weeks, and then 12 weeks, 2 times a week. This is a little bit more interesting, because it's a study done in Harvard. And why, for me, that's very interesting, because the thing is that you have a comparison between let's say, the real treatment, let's say RTMS, cognitive training, and then we have one group, it's only called cognitive and sham, and then we have a group sham, so placebo. And you see that the improvement with this guy, but that's not so wonderful, not so strange, is that the improvement with the patients with this guy is more than 6 points of ALZHEIMEROVJ. Alvaro Pasqualione is, let's say, the RTMS guru in the world. He's working in Harvard, and I've spoken with his technicians and with his nurses, and they know exactly what they're doing. They don't do nothing else than RTMS or this. So And that's also very important, how you put the coil on a certain spot and how to get then this results. But you see that also with cognitive training alone, people improve. But it's not so impressive as if you have the combination. That's his functional MRI, and that's why I was pinpointing already the whole time to that, because you see here what's happening. You see before, very much gray area, not a lot of perfusion of the brain, and you see after 6 weeks, you see a lot of perfusion of the brain. And like I said, everybody knows what that means. That's the same. You get more nutrients, more oxygen, but like that, you get greater production of neurotransmitters. He's always saying a very funny thing, because he's saying it makes the brain circuits work better. It leads to better cognitive function and daily life. He always says, but that we don't write down, but he always said, if you really ask me how that works on molecular level, I don't know. He said, but I would put my mother in this chair. And that he's saying for the audience. But like I said, I'm not going to. I'm just repeating that. I'm not going to put that on the slide. This is one of his students. This guy is a very young German doctor. He worked 3 years with Pasquale Leone, and he's now in Maastricht. And so on the border with Germany, with Aachen. And a few weeks ago, I spoke with him. I spoke with him on 2 reasons, because you see that he has only stimulated 4 weeks, and with some patients he got a very big improvement. And so he's a scientist. He's doing only scientists. He's doing a lot of research. And he said the thing is that when we talk about Alzheimer, and I'm also due to that because I'm doing that, we only talk about numbers. And he said, what we forget is that it doesn't go on numbers with patients, You can tell, this patient improved 5 points. So what did it say? Nothing. He said, I have seen people. And he said, you would not believe that. He said, there was one guy who was a bookkeeper and lost his job. So lost his job, lost his social life. Can you imagine? From one day and the other, you're at home. And so they did the treatment with this guy, and he improved so much that he got his job back. And as a joke, he always say, probably somebody is controlling him over his shoulder, because somebody who has Alzheimer cannot do the books. But at least it says something that, like I said, what I wanted to say with this is we only talk about numbers, and we don't talk about what's going on with the real patient. So, and this study, I always have to laugh, but it's for me, says more than 100,000 words, this study. The thing is that it's published in the Journal of Neurology last November, and the thing is that when you see here is that the placebo group also improved 3 points. So the treatment groups improved more than 6 points. Let me see if I can get the pointer. No, just like. But you see the red line. So you see that improvement with somebody who was really treated. And then you see the blue line. It's a treatment. It's not no treatment. But the thing is that what they found out, and that they had the same conclusions afterwards, is that the patients who got the placebo, who were the placebo group, the nurses and operators spent more time on this group because they were looking to a movie and just hearing click, click, click. And what I want to say with that is that if we spend a little bit more time with Alzheimer patients, you see already an improvement. And that's, I don't say you, but the problem is because we don't have time and the group gets so big, but only attention, brings already something. Oh, yeah. You see the trials again, just in one sheet. I want to show you this.
My name is Aline Gütelman. My husband is George Gütelman. We are 70 years old. And we used to work for an airline that we own. And we had a life very busy with that special occupation. In 2007, I realized that there was small problems about his memory. He didn't remember things that had happened half an hour or an hour before. So I decided that we should go to a neurologist, and the neurologist said that he should come every 6 months to be checked. The medical treatment did not have such a good result. I heard about Neuronix from friends. We came to Neuronix and we met there with the director. Doctor told us that we can begin the treatment. He can be accepted, and the treatment would be 6 weeks, 5 days a week, 1 hour a day. The treatment were very nice to go. George liked it very much. Nothing, nothing hard, and the people working there were very, very nice. There was not bad sensation during the treatment. I was able to watch some improvement. He's taking now a piano lesson. The teacher gives him new pieces that he begins to play and remember them. So it's very encouraging. Last week we begin to draw an aircraft. That aircraft is incredible. I wouldn't be able to do it. We have a lot of friends in Israel, and they told us they also saw the difference, that he is very well, and the kids, our children, also say the same thing. I would definitely recommend the people who are concerned to go to Neuronix to make a treatment. And we are considering to do another one, which would be the fourth. Not now, because we just finished the third, but maybe when there is the need, we'll go back to do another treatment at Neuronix.
So, why I don't like this is, I will tell you why, because they own an airplane company, and so it looks like if only rich people can do it. But I can tell you we have 3 clinics in Israel who are full. We don't do anything. People who have money, people not money, go there. So, but that's the only thing I wanted to say. That, and I just told you that you can maybe not repeat it more than 2 times, but you heard it already. But I'm not going to go further on that, because the thing is that we will publish some data about people who really have done 2 times the session, and will be published in an official magazine. So because here you see that's very, very old, but that's what we did with 5 patients. For a second time, and you see that almost all the people get to the same level as before, even some of them improve a little bit more. And then you can see also 1 patient, you see that's only 80%, and 80% from 5 patients is 4. But there's 1 patient who didn't improve because it's a heavy alcoholist, and so they took him also out of the thing. So now, just to summarize, it's like I said, it's a new non-pharmaceutical treatment. There's a huge demand for that, of course, and we prove now that it works, or we have proof that it works. Maybe the numbers are not so big as with pharmaceuticals, but we don't have to, because even the FDA doesn't ask us about that. And I think it's not, Alzheimer is not a problem for the patient, it's more a problem for the family. Sure, also for the patients, but it's a problem for everybody, you know. And if you have had Alzheimer patients in your family, but you have it in your daily practice, but then you know exactly what could help you. Huh? So this is called the Plex paradigm, Max Planck. Everybody knows probably Max Planck is Max Planck paradigma. And I think it's very hard, but it's like that, you know, it's the truth. Because if you look to RTMS, that exists since 1973. And finally we got an FDA approval in 2008. And in Europe it's not even approved. In Germany we don't have a code that pays for it. So can you imagine, we have now 50 years of RTMS and nothing happened. Hopefully we don't go the same way with this. That's why I'm saying a new scientific truth does not win by convincing opponents and show them the light, but because the opponents finally die and a new generation grows up that it's familiar with it. That's a paradigm, but it's the truth. So like I said, hopefully we don't have to wait for that. So questions, answers, remarks?